6 o'clock. Lonnie's gonna be joining us as soon as he can get in here. He's already called, he figured it'd be about 6:10 before he's gonna make it.
Quicker tonight than tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, much quicker. All right, so we'll call this meeting to order. I emailed out the minutes.
I was driving, I didn't know.
That's all right. Here's a written copy y'all can look over my last meeting. The cheat sheet for what we'll be talking about.
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
I second it. Where'd you get this from? What county? No, I mean, what county?
Oh, directly from Cheatham County. You talking about the PUD?
Yeah.
So,
I plagiarized literally.
all in favor?
Uh,
With those approved, we'll move on to first item of discussion. What you got for us, Rick?
Thought we'd go through the PUD stuff. And any other things that come along. I've got the matrix also. I can hand that out when we finish this. It shouldn't take all that long. Like I said, I cropped this out of Cheatham County. They asked for a mixed use. But in addition to the residential type, and as you'll see when we go through it, the items that are outlined on the handout are things for discussion. And they're not necessarily highlighted in yellow. That's for me to check for continuity to make sure that Article 7 is actually the reference that needs to be there. But scrolling down, this is all pretty much boilerplate. This is the introduction. I didn't know if it was supposed to be building commissioner or building inspector in Trouser County.
I believe it's inspectors the way we've got it. That's when we go through the definitions. I was reading through that earlier today.
That's easy. Let me take out.
While you're doing that, since we've got two new members, or one newer member, the PUD, this came up in planning with a property owner wanting to take his 10 acres here in the urban district up to R3, wanted to come in for a rezoning. And he was shot down in planning. And I was talking to him after the meeting, and what he was wanting to do is he was wanting, his property is 10 acres, but it's 10 acres up a hill. And 5 of those acres in the middle of that hill would be very expensive to build on, and he's got no ambitions of building there. He's just wanting to do 5 houses across the top, bordering on one road, one street, make those lots long enough to eat up half that, no man's land in the middle. And then build apartments at the bottom, that's where it's on another street. And that's why he needed it to be R3. He's not wanting to do, let's see, it's 12 houses an acre, 10 acres. He's not wanting to put 120 apartments on that 10 acres.
well, houses.
Yeah, that's the maximum you can do on an acre in an R3.
In our ordinances.
That's already set. So, and that's why he got shot down, because we didn't, as commission thought that density was too great for the infrastructure of that area. So what I was talking to him, since that's not what he wanted, he didn't want to do 120 single or multifamily units. I talked to him about the idea of the PUD, which Rick had talked about to me multiple times, of something that was an option that we don't currently have in our legislation in Tri-State County. And so the PUD is, and I always get the, what's it saying?
Planned unit development.
Okay, so the planned unit development. So what it'll do is it'll allow him to come in with his master plan of how he wants to build on his property. And it would be its own zoning. So he wouldn't be an R3 or an R2, or he would be a PUD. And that PUD would be outlined by what we're talking about
Well,
here.
this would kind of, in a way,
It would be its,
his zone.
it would be his zoning.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
okay.
he wouldn't have an R3 or an R2, he would have a PUD.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so what it does though, is if he sells that property, And the next person owns that property decides, well, it's R3, it's 10 acres and I've got the money. I do want to put 120 on there. You can't
Because it's a PUD.
because it's PUD, it's not an R3. And so you're locked into that plan. Now, if that individual wants to change the PUD, it would be just like coming and doing another rezoning. And then they would have to come in and bring their plan, or they could try to get it rezoned to an R3. They have that option also, but it takes some of the risk away from the county of doing R3 on large plots in already dense areas.
And it's got the minimum lot size, so they can't go in and make it bigger. I mean, jam them in.
Right.
Exactly.
The,
8,000.
the density is controlled and the lot sizes are spelled out for single family, but not for multifamily.
Oh,
It's still traffically hard in that area.
where is the area?
There by,
Church Street.
between Church Street and Morrison, runs right up beside Academy Apartments.
That house that burned down.
The White
Years
House and there,
ago.
you come in right beside of it. The driveway was when it,
Yeah, so,
Stanley,
Mr. Cochran's old
Mr.
house.
Hawkins.
yeah, so it's,
green top.
No,
And then
on
that lot beside it used to be a house. that
so
burned
his
down.
property actually borders Academy Apartments.
So that's on up the hill.
It runs, yeah, it's on up Church Street and it runs all the way up to Morrison.
You remember that house that they were auctioning off?
It-
Did it,
It's the empty, empty
to this
lot.
man, I guess.
Oh, you may.
No.
So get down there so they can see it in there.
In order to be able for him to do that, this would actually open that up for some other people who want to do the same thing, but are getting shot down on large tracts of land because what we got stuck with,
You see what I'm seeing.
so what happened, several years back, behind First Baptist Church, there's a 10-acre lot there that, he's got one. There's a 10-acre lot there that comes off of Melrose. Melrose is the only street access for that land. They came in with it being approved at R1 for 34 houses. They wanted to do 36.
That's that lot in between the two
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
yeah, it backs up
Yeah,
against.
I was there when they auctioned that.
So he came into us saying, showing this just, I mean, drainage was all taken care of. It was a beautiful site plan. And he's like, but for it to financially work, I need to be able to get 2 more houses in there. So I'm asking to be rezoned to R3. Seemed like a very reasonable request. We sent it forward with favorable out of planning. It gets to the commission. Commission says, yeah, it looks great. They approved it. A year later, he sold it.
Yeah,
And now the person who owns it comes in with a site plan and says, hey, I don't want to do single family. It's R3. I want to do townhomes. So here's 112, 113 townhomes.
Yeah.
Okay, your only egress is on Melrose, which is a 2-lane road with no stoplight, but you want to dump
Yeah.
2 cars per townhome onto what's already backed up.
260 some cars.
And there's nothing we can do. If they want to build it, they can, because we approved it to go to R3.
So would this PUD business take care of that kind of thing also?
Can.
In the future.
In the
Right,
future,
in
not
the
in
future,
this
I
one.
understand that.
That's the whole reason for doing it.
Okay.
That's the whole reason for even wanting to take this on, is so that we can stop that from happening. But still, the projects where it's a single family and they want to do 2 more homes and R3 allows them to do the setbacks where they can do that, then they can do that.
And you've seen this in Cheatham County and it looks attractive and it's
It
really.
can. It all depends.
Uh-huh.
It depends on what they bring to you. What you see on paper is what you'll see on the ground, but you're the police.
Yeah.
You look at it and see and decide whether it's what you want or not. At the point it's asked to be rezoned.
So what they would do is they would come through planning just like any other rezoning. They wouldn't just be requesting a rezoning, they would actually be submitting their preliminary plat up front for that project.
But it
So
would
we
have
would
to
go
have
through.
these, if
It
it's
would.
a PUD, it would have to have these,
It
so
would.
it would look good.
It should. That's right.
Okay.
It prevents somebody from selling something that's zoned and then
Right,
backdooring in something else like
Yeah.
what's happening here. It's just,
There's a billion of them under you. It's a great way to protect it.
So the planning commission couldn't shoot it down because it would be too much.
We could. Anything that comes through planning, as far as any rezonings, we can only send it with a favorable, a non-favorable, or nothing at all. We can't stop a rezoning. That's the commission
Right.
only.
But you can stop it planning.
But when he comes to the planning side of it and he brings his plat, we can send him back, no, you can't do it this way. You're gonna have to make X and Y changes.
Right.
He would have to change the plat. It would come back to us. We look at the site plan again. Okay, now this meets our criteria.
Right.
Because anything that we bring in on planning side, your number one question is, do we have the infrastructure for this project?
Right.
And if we don't, it's a no. That's the way it's supposed to be.
One thing I'll caution you about, it's not necessarily carte blanche that the planning commission or the county commission can say no. HUDs operate a little bit like a conditional use.
Okay.
Where your ordinance specifies for a discount tobacco store.
Mhm.
Somebody brings you a request for special exception or a conditional use for a discount tobacco store in the zone that allows it.
Okay.
And you've got spelled out those things that they need to do to be issued that
Yeah.
conditional use. Once they've met those, they've got an expectation of being approved.
You can't deny once they're,
Sort of goes with this. Once you put down your development criteria and someone brings you a set of plans that, for the most part, meet your criteria, they have an expectation of being approved. So you gotta tread lightly how you go about it. You can say no, but it needs to be a qualified no. So if they get to the point of spending, it's nothing to spend $50,000 on a site plan.
yes,
If they get to the point that they've developed and delivered to you a good site plan that shows what they want to do, that meets your requirements for a PUD, then you can negotiate. You can say, maybe, it's hard to say no at that point.
Yeah.
If they've gotten to that point of developing a site plan based on the criteria that you've established through these ordinances. So I offer that as caution, that you can't just turn a blind eye and say, no, we don't want you to go play somewhere else. That's dangerous.
yeah.
Because
But that's dangerous with any plan.
if it's a zoning request today for R3, you can say no, because there's no expectation of that if they're not currently zoned.
Okay,
If you have this as an option and they've gone to the extent and the expense of developing under these guidelines, then they've built up an expectation. So
so it is a little different.
it's not just a black letter zoning request. No, have to be careful.
That really will put more on you, Rosalie, to make sure
It
that,
does.
It's like plans review.
Yeah.
You have to.
And if they're smart, before they spend whatever it takes to develop that site plan, they'll sketch out something and bring it
yeah, and ask.
and say, is this what you think you want?
Yeah.
Does this meet what you say you want in here? Because if it does, I'll move forward and spend the money.
And typically, developers will come into the office and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What is it that I'm gonna need to do? And I walk them through the steps. This is what you do, this is what you need to
Sure.
do. So that, this is what we work on.
so this is not HUDs for residents only.
No.
But commercial HUD.
If you look, there's two on there.
That's
CM HUD.
CMUPD.
That's for commercial. That allows commercial
So it
and
is-
residential to be mixed.
CMU is commercial mixed use.
That's-
So pretty much in zoning classification that we will have to be protected under a PUD,
Yes,
and that's what we're looking to do.
except for industrial. This excludes industrial because you don't want to mix residential with industrial.
Yeah, I voted no on that, night. On that subdivision that we were talking about. That's all we voted no, I think.
Well, let's walk through the process. It starts out with preliminary master plan that's submitted with the rezoning request. and has a site plan that goes with it. So the two track along. And if it is approved by the planning commission, then it goes to the county commission with the preliminary for the rezoning. Upon approval, the developer can go forward with their final master plan and bring that back to the planning commission. The final doesn't go to the county commission.
Yeah.
They
Just like
only
the
send
other
it to
site
them.
plan.
That's
So
right.
I have one question there,
Mhm.
because I'm learning.
Mhm.
Nothing can come before the commission unless it's been first approved by the planning commission.
First review.
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 Yeah. We don't approve them, we review them. And then like I
But what
said,
if you say no?
well, we can't say no, we can say we don't have a
It
favorable.
comes with the no.
Yeah,
So when it was mentioned it was shot down, it wasn't negated and taken out of the water, he still could have gone to the county commission. But it would have been an unfavorable recommendation from planning, but he still could have gone.
Mhm.
And, you know, they could have gone ahead and voted yes, but he decided he'd like to pull back and see what else he could do, and thus the plan that he's talking about.
But,
But
This thing's about 16 pages or so, so you can thumb through it and get to the gory details. But I'm just gonna try to hit the highlights for you. The zoning amendment, it spells out how that happens. It goes to the county commission after review. Application for final approval goes to the planning commission. Final approval of stages. If they want to break it up and do it in phases, they can do that. Development plan of a master plan unit development.
if I remember correctly, when reading it though, it actually set time limits on those phases.
That's right.
It's not just an obligatory, well, I wanna do 3 phases and I'll take my leisure at doing those 3 phases. There, it's set times so that the project doesn't just sit there half finished for 10 years. So there is some safeguards there too that we don't currently really have much of that now.
And they can come back and ask for an extension if they choose. Final development plan, plan unit development amendment to the PUD, they can amend it, they can bring it back, and if what they're proposing looks kosher, then you can sign off on it. Subdivision plat required where lots are being parceled off. Building reconstruction, they can get in there and update or bring back code, damaged or destroyed buildings. Zoning consideration, when there is submitted. That's boilerplate. Okay, our PUD is a residential PUD and it spells out what's allowed and the types of other uses other than residential are also allowed. And it goes into commercial activities in the residential PUD. Says, I think it says it's gotta be 100 acres before it qualifies. So that can change. That's up to the body, that's up to the county, how you want this to operate. That's the reason I bring it before you. No outside storage permitted in a residential PUD. Is that something you want in there?
what does that mean exactly? Define
Mini
outside
barns?
storage.
Is that what that means, or just?
I mean, just outside storage.
The outside storage could be a semi trailer on the lot, it could be
Piles?
I mean,
Could be a comments.
yeah. Could be a mini building.
I would say no, I'd say, I
Just-
agree with that.
Pallets of stuff on the ground?
Yeah,
It could be the mini bar too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's enforcement. And that's hard to do after it goes through. That's gonna depend on things other than zoning.
Is that her job?
Yes.
Bless your heart. A permanent landscape maintained buffer of 15 feet along the, driveways, permanently landscaped side and rear yards of 10 feet. Front and side and rear 15 and 10 feet, if that's something you want in there. And that'll come into play in multifamily. You won't see that on single family. Signs, if there are signs in the development, flat against the wall, that's gonna be for the commercial part of it. Not exceed 30 square feet in size. And we don't have to decide all this tonight, I'm just pointing out the high points. The yellow is what I picked out that you may have some concerns about.
Well, here's a crazy question. The buffer, you got a tree that comes out 10 feet. You don't have to have 15 feet from where the tree comes out.
No, it's from the property line.
Gotcha.
So the tree actually becomes part of the buffer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we actually have in some of our subdivision regulations where your trees and shrubs that are already there can count towards your buffer and screening also. But we tried to encourage not cutting down trees.
I know, that didn't get put out.
No, I think.
5 acre minimum to qualify for a residential PUD.
Okay.
That's,
Now,
that's not big, it's not small, it's an arbitrary number
but back up, because you said the 100 acres. What was the
for
100?
commercial,
Okay, for commercial. Okay.
commercial within the residential PUD.
Okay,
And that's gonna be a big
yeah,
development, so I wouldn't expect many of those to happen as a residential
well,
PUD.
there's only a couple of lots where they could happen.
So keep in mind, if you want it to stay at 5 acres, that's the way it's written today. A peripheral boundary of, not less than 30 feet, so the outer perimeter of the development is required to have a 30-foot buffer.
Okay.
Where there's no building structures, development.
Okay. Now,
And,
that buffer can be grass, it can be,
Sure. oh yeah,
it doesn't have to necessarily be.
Could it be a road?
it could be.
Cause you can build a sidewalk around it and then have a, I don't know.
It
15-foot
could
road.
be. If it falls within the buffer requirement between, say, residential and industrial, then it has to follow that guideline.
Yes,
But regardless of what the zoning is on the other side, there's a 30-foot separation around the perimeter.
around.
Can we put in here that they must build sidewalks?
Actually, we already have that for subdivision regulations, so any large subdivision
But what
has
has
to be.
but,
Well, PUDs are still gonna have to follow those regulations, will they not?
I mean,
If there's a division of property, yeah,
Yeah.
if there's a subdivision that's part of it, absolutely.
So this doesn't negate the ordinances that we have in place, this adds to.
Now, having said there's a 30-foot perimeter setback within the boundary of the R PUD, there are no setback requirements.
Yeah.
Other than building and fire code requirements. So a building with walls as opposed to, with windows as opposed to a wall without windows is a different separation requirement. But there's nothing mentioned in here about how far those buildings have to be apart or how far they're set back from the sidewalk or the street. Public street, private street, if it's a public street, you want to pay attention to it if they're going to develop it and try to dedicate it to the county. But if it's a private street, that's up to the developer and the planning commission to go through the gory details of how that happens.
And we already have stuff in place as far as requirements for those, as far as width and,
For public streets,
yeah.
8,000 foot minimum for, single family lot. And 75 feet wide for a single family lot, and that's special to this. If it's in a R1, R2, R3 zone, those numbers are different. But within the PUD, that stands for residential development. So
So if this is 75 feet minimum street, okay,
Mhm.
so if they're. Help me out here, Rosalie, what's the requirement on R3 for street? It's 50 foot, right? Is the minimum?
for the setbacks?
Well, no, for the road frontage.
the lot width. That sounds right.
It's
The
50
the
foot.
road frontage is 50 feet. The
Yeah.
Road frontage or. any-
50 sounds right.
So
But
does that-
lot width has building.
would that trump the 75 here or?
No,
75?
this is within the PUD.
Okay,
And it also says it's for detached dwellings on the lot. So that's only talking about single family lots, 8,000 feet
What
and
would be-
75 wide.
what would be the benefit of having that larger than all the other requirements for street frontage?
They look better, but nicer. But maybe
Better than
better square footage.
75,
Yeah, the 75 versus 50 that we already had.
that's just a standard. I mean, it can be
50's
it can be a
very
number, any number, that's arbitrary.
But the
With single family.
It's usually tied to, the, normal lot size.
Mhm.
If it's an 8,000 foot lot and it's 75 feet wide, then it's gonna be, what, 110 feet deep, something like that.
We
Okay.
got
So-
Are
one
you saying
driveway.
lot width is only 75 or road
No.
frontage?
Minimum. Road frontage is 75 feet wide at the building setback line.
Because lot width in like, if you were like in a R2, which is basically R3 out in the county, it's 100 feet wide.
Well, this is just piggybacking on both. There's a standard for street frontage and a standard for lot width, and this combines it and says street frontage of not less than 75 feet at the building setback line.
I see what it's like.
So you have to consider okay, what kind of setbacks are we gonna do? Because that's what it is with that, if you're gonna be having large side property line setbacks, then that's gonna be a very.
There are no side setback lines
There's 30. All the way around.
on the outside.
Yeah, so if you're,
If this happens to be on the outside, but interior, there are none.
I understand, but I guess, and I think what Rosalie is looking at is the 75 minimum street frontage, well, that's your minimum across the front, so if you're only 75 there. Well, then you gotta be 30 on each side of that, so that's 60, so you're only 15 foot. in the
No, no,
building.
no. The 30 is the perimeter of the development. If it's 100 acres, that 30 feet is around 100 acres. If it's 10 acres, it's 30 feet around that 10 acres.
I see.
But interior,
Whole-
there is none.
Okay.
It's only a
project,
peripheral
not
boundary.
the lot.
And it's a separation for the development itself, and the internal setbacks aren't unspecified. That's between you and the developer.
They can just have a walk in between.
That's right.
Okay, so
And
that,
building code and fire code.
so that being said, this will allow tiny homes to be developed under a PUD.
On an 8,000 foot lot.
Mhm.
So we need to,
It doesn't say what size house, it says what size lot.
I didn't bring this to say this is what we should do. I brought this because this is what has been suggested and it's what's been discussed. That's part of what it, bringing it before you
Can we
guys.
drop a square footage no in there?
For a home,
That stops people from living in mini barns, man.
I don't know.
And-
You
and
can do that.
They full of,
Could we not reference the
Undesirable.
minimums we already have for buildings?
That's a different discussion. That brings in hood requirements and all kinds of things, fair housing,
Yeah,
everything gets rolled into that one. You can put it in here, and a good friend of mine says anything's legal till the court of higher jurisdiction says otherwise.
well, we really don't wanna test those waters, but
No, but you don't wanna open a license for subdivisions of tiny homes, people living in mini barns, we don't do that.
You're gonna see what they're proposing. I mean, it's not,
yes, but like you said, if they go through and they meet all the requirements, we're
They can't.
obligated to approve.
yeah, in some respects, if it's a single family development. And they've got an 8,000 foot lot, they're not likely to limit all of those to tiny homes, that'd be an inefficient use of their property. If it's a multifamily development, they're gonna have to show you how all those tiny homes line up. They only gonna get 12 to an acre. So again, that's not a very efficient use of their property, I think,
so the house would go back.
to it,
Hold on, you're saying 12 to an acre.
multifamily.
Aren't these houses on River Street just 50 or 75 foot lots? At River Street, these old houses and then goes that in.
My house ain't 75.
Because those. are-
House or lot.
Do you,
Lot 75 by 1 feet.
and do you have room for a driveway?
Yeah, I got a driveway, but my house is only 35 foot wide.
It's kind of
So
a
you
shotgun,
think so?
so it's long and.
I know his house,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was just square, but then we built.
Can we make them bigger?
Yeah.
Well, I think-
Mine's about 18.
Does this say that there's no street parking?
Mhm.
We want that.
Not in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, that's another.
That's a,
It's a site plan.
I think what, and I'm just now catching this, so. The fourth, where it says the 4.35 dwelling units per acre max for a single family.
Mhm.
And then it's got 12 dwelling units per acre max for multifamily.
Mhm.
So if you're doing multiple dwellings in your PUD, you're only allowed to do 12 multi-units per acre.
It's pretty dense.
That's pretty dense.
It's an R3 density that you've got right now, but you've got control over what you see, so.
Yeah, I tell you, let's make it less.
You want it to be attractive enough for people to go for it, you don't want it to
And
be.
spend some money on it.
so
Not have, but not
overwhelming.
slap up some,
we don't want a bunch of vinyl villages popping up,
We
it's
do.
basically a bunch of mini barns nailed together that people live in.
Cause that puts us right back to where we were when they had the single wide, trailer park. And we had to come up with all kinds of regulations to help clean that up.
This alone is not gonna do that, this won't open the floodgates, because they're bound to bring you something up front.
Mhm.
to show you what they're doing. They got to tip their hand.
But if it makes the requirements, we have to be careful. That's in
You
there.
have to be careful. Don't necessarily say you can't say no, but you have to be careful with it.
Right now, if you're an R3, you can put 12 units.
We're talking about
Right.
codes right now.
We are, but
So
I'm,
let's,
I'm just pointing out the fact that 12 units to an acre isn't something just unusual. It is already in R3 dwellings now. So it is already in us.
we may be making, am I correct?
This would be a
We may
new
be
zone.
making cuts next.
If you like to think so, yes.
How much R3 is there?
Part of it, R3.
We can
So,
deny
as far
our
as
three and
acreage,
go say,
yeah.
well,
So if someone brings you a plan for 12 units per acre. And because of whatever, they only have access to 1 2-lane road or any number of things that are against it. And you've got a lot of other R3 property in the county already sitting there undeveloped, that may be on a better road. You can say, we think you need to put your 12 units up to the acre on some of this R3 property we've already got sitting here undeveloped. But I don't own that. Well, go make an offer to it. You might be able to get it. But we don't like your 12 acres right here today.
and that's gonna take someone with, courage. Not, because some people just, oh yeah, whatever. And it's gonna take forethought, and it's gonna take knowing the policy.
I've noticed that courage comes with a full room. Pretty easy. If the house is crowded, it's easier to get that, no than it is if there's.
So
know,
shouldn't we
there's
make this where it's what we want? And someone doesn't have to say,
You know, you go to Galvin where the red light is, there on the highway there, that big field to the left. Guy told me that years back, a year or 2 ago, that that's been turned down 5 or 6 times for subdivision because of traffic.
Yeah.
They won't.
Yeah.
They won't,
They keep trying.
yeah.
But first it was utilities because it didn't have access to sewer. Well, they paid to have that extended. Now the property has sewer. They brought it back again and got rejected again. Now it's a traffic issue. I mean, they just keep trying because it's a large plot of
It's a
land.
huge.
and I wouldn't think Hartsville has that really silly.
And I like to call it planner's poker.
So, as far as Hartsville sewer system, I mean, the water department, if I remember correctly, has plans to actually build
In
a
the next
second,
20 years.
another water treatment plant. To keep up with the volume. So that is another thing, though. I mean, when this comes to planning, the density is an issue. Just because you can do that, doesn't mean you're allowed to do that with the infrastructure not in place.
So you have to disapprove it, and then it comes to the commission.
With the
And
explanation,
hardly
yeah.
nothing gets approved in that commission. How do they know?
Well, rezoning seem to get it through regular basis.
Well, there's precedent.
Rezoning,
Yeah.
us putting zoning in, once it gets to commission.
Yeah.
Does not get approved. Pretty much if someone wants something, they're gonna do it.
So
So,
there's precedent for 12 units per acre. You already have that in your R3.
Yeah.
So this is not outside the lines. It's just
Exactly.
another option. And there's nothing to force you to accept 12 units per acre. There's nothing that says that a developer has to max out the density. They tend to want to because.
Yeah.
Money's involved. I don't blame them. But if there's another option of R3 that allows 12 units per acre, saying less than 12 is what we're looking for, doesn't keep them from building. It just keeps them from building on that property right now. For what that's worth. There's nothing that goes with this that encumbers the county to do anything that you say in here. This is a new option.
So what we're looking at establishing before something even goes to planning. When somebody brings me something that they want to take to planning with some type of subdivision or development. Implementing a feasibility letter where they have to go to all the different utilities and say. Yes, it will handle this type of development. Yes, we do have water, we do have lines, we do have whatever we decide.
The infrastructure has to be in place to handle that kind of
And they
demand.
have to give me the paperwork for that. I'm working with, Evan White on that. To, create a document that I'll give them and they have to go and check and get it all approved.
And I wish we could get the infrastructure already going.
And the floodgates are not gonna open when you adopt this.
Right.
Because this requires a plan to go with it, where today, it does.
And it's tied to that definitive plan, that zoning is, and if it does, it reverts.
Even if it resells, that's right.
Right.
So, I mean, it's another option, it's one more place to go to look at something that you wanna do. But it's not going to wholesale change anything overnight, in my opinion.
So, Rick clarified, it doesn't automatically revert back to its original. It stays a PUD, PUD becomes its new rezoning. And if the county has the option after it sits there for so long dormant to revert it back, we have that option. But it would just sit there as that PUD until that PUD changed
Or a new
Or they
buyer
would-
could come and say, let's.
and do
With a
another
new buyer,
rezoning.
they have to submit a site plan, or it has to match the previous.
Or they can just ask,
Has to be rezoned.
or they just ask to be rezoned.
Mhm.
So if they haven't lost any options, this is just an extra one.
But each
For
PUD
better
is tied
approval.
to a specific site plan.
Doesn't change.
And if it changes, then it goes dormant until.
Yep.
Somebody picks it up and starts over from ground zero.
Yes,
So can we make this stronger?
Absolutely. I mean, you want to.
I do.
when
I
you start
wanna-
making it stronger, you start opening yourself up to more litigation.
I don't necessarily wanna have people living in mini barns, but I don't wanna end up in court over it or something.
Mini barns as in.
Tiny homes,
Well, now, tiny homes are allowed in the county if they're stick built.
Unless we say no. Unless they're not gonna be allowed on the bus.
It's already in place. If
Right, yeah,
it's stick
they
built,
have
you
that.
just can't go buy it off of a lot, say, okay, drop it here, fellas.
They have to
I'm
build.
done.
They
They
have to
have
go.
to build it.
But if this,
It's-
if,
however, if somebody builds a tiny home, we're just telling them we don't want 40 on a quarter acre lot.
Yes, because currently on a residential, you can only have one residence on the lot.
One primary structure.
And even if it's R3, we don't want them stacking on top of each other.
Exactly, that's why we have the limitations of 12 units per acre.
What about the metal build,
Shipping containers.
yeah, shipping container.
that's
That's just a type of construction, as long as it meets code, you can't ban it.
24 an acre is, can't we say 80? Can it?
You can, but now you're
You're
changing
going
our
against the rest
requirements,
of, you're going against the
the
other
rest of
side.
our zoning. When you start being inconsistent, now you start opening yourself to litigation.
Litigation. I can say where the 12 an acre comes from is an apartment building.
Yep.
Now, individual homes,
That's four buildings, 3 units per building.
now, you can do that in an acre, but which I think what she's trying to say, to clarify, is she don't want 12 individual houses.
And I don't know street parking either.
And 12 individual houses doesn't, I don't think you can do that. In an acre. Unless they're tiny homes.
Well, it's allowed though.
And how small house you're making.
Unless they're tiny homes.
Yeah. You do it 500 square foot of a home or 700 square foot of home,
And we're saying
and you don't have a
it's.
sidewalk between them.
So I'm just, I think suggesting we change it.
It's the minimal. Because we've had an individual come in who has property in the urban district, so we had access to sewer. They wanted to do tiny homes. And our current setup doesn't mention tiny homes. It's just a home's a home. It's either a home or it's a trailer. That's the way our zoning is worked. So if you roll it in on wheels, it's a trailer. If you build it on a foundation, it's stick built, it's, so that one meets one requirement, one meets the other. Mayor Chambers tried to get us to pass the ordinance specifically for tiny homes to do a carve out. And we just planning shot it down from the get go. We already have minimum set already. There's no reason to do a carve out just for these tiny homes.
Now, how many 1,200 square foot homes could get on one of these PUDs? 12 an acre or whatever it was.
750 is the minimum. How many 750s?
750
Square
square feet?
Yeah,
We don't want to allow that.
that's the minimum.
That's what's in the paper.
That's what the minimum for a tiny.
And I'm saying.
That's the minimum for any
Anyhow,
stick
any
built.
dwelling.
Yeah.
I'm saying we should change.
You can't build a house smaller than that.
And we are gonna open up
slum areas.
Not doing this. This is just
Okay.
another zoning type. All this does is say, if you wanna build this in this zone, do it this way. For today, if you say you wanna build this in this zone, you don't say which way.
Yeah, right now, if you build a house in an R3, you build it however you want it,
Okay,
as long as it meets the setbacks and.
okay.
So this is putting a little more restriction on that, on the PUD zoning. Like I said, it's still not negating what we already have in place.
This is just for just a little variance from what we have anyway, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. It's more certain.
Yeah.
You see up front what's being proposed.
You get to see the variance,
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
and that means they gotta spend extra money to use. Sure.
That's right.
So hopefully we won't have as much as what we had a couple of years back of people coming, doing subdivisions. And then selling them off to investors. Instead of actually developing the property as they say they are. We have a bunch of approved development, right now I know of. 2 subdivisions that were approved, that neither one of them have been constructed. And the original owners had no intentions of ever doing the construction. They just wanted to get it approved and then sell the subdivision. Yeah, down at Sulphur College on 25.
Right now, everybody is accustomed to doing it the way it's laid out in the zoning ordinance. You get R1, R2, R3 zoning, and you build that development accordingly. There may come a time down the road where you say, if you want to rezone,
This is the way we
go to a PUD. That may happen.
I just, in all honesty, I mean, to save ourselves from, another 45 minutes of discussion on the same topic. It's gonna clean it up. It stops people from getting something zoned and then, with a nefarious motive.
Yeah.
Submitting a bogus site plan, getting it passed, and then turning around and selling it, and somebody else coming in there because of that zoning.
Mhm.
And just doing whatever they want, which is something that you would never have passed.
That's right.
And that just stops this. So I mean, I understand that we gotta go through and clean this up a bit as per Charleston County, but by and large, this will save a lot of heartache down the road.
It won't change anything that's already zoned.
No, but going forward, from the day that this gets passed, and approved,
Exactly.
Make that a
then
motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Jeff. From your standpoint, because I know you're working on building some apartments, you've already kind of come through this process. Is there anything that we've discussed, one, that would encourage you to go PUD versus general rezoning? Or anything that's discouraged you on your current project?
Well, like I said, I don't really know that yet, because I'm a long ways from getting started, and I've never done nothing like that. so.
Yeah.
But,
He's just wanting to get everything surveyed.
yeah, I'm still waiting on the survey, it's about 3 or 4 months now.
Well, in all honesty, Jeff, I mean, I think in some respects it would protect you as well, your investment on surrounding
Right,
properties. Because, you don't sink your money into it, and then somebody comes around and does something completely devalues.
right, I can see what you're
Your
saying
costs.
on them little houses, but. If there's just take for instance. Danny Joe Griggy, they live right across from me, I own that house across the road, it's about 900 square feet, and I mean, it's not a bad looking little house.
Yeah.
But it depends a lot on what they're wanting to build, if it's gonna look like a single wide trailer all the way down through there,
That's what a lot of them look like.
that's not something what I think we would want.
And those houses up there on Upper Andrews, they have driveway.
Yeah,
People
I
are
wasn't
parking
gonna-
on the road.
but that road on one side is supposed to be parking.
Yeah, being on your side is,
Now it's the other side.
your side's got the sidewalk.
But when they park over there, there's not enough room for all them trucks to get up and down through there and cars.
Mm.
The truck issue down through there's, it's an issue too. I was out there one day and I watched 25 come through in one day.
On Andrews Avenue.
Yeah,
Going to Mueller,
both. Well, not just him, but there's other deliveries out there, yeah.
Well, all in factories, the trucks come right through there.
Carol wanted to put a road over to U-Haul Town Road. But where it come out at, come right under a hill, you you'd have to pull out, people would be running over you. That's the only reason he stopped it.
If you would bear with me, let me run through the high spots here. The strict requirement is 22 feet paved for two-way, 12 feet wide for one-way street. Dead end street has 80-foot turnaround. That's pretty standard. It can be more than that, but that should be enough to turn around emergency equipment.
That's all inside the PUD. That's not referring to access streets to the property, correct?
Right,
What about?
right, that's development.
School bus, they pick it up for a school bus.
It should be, it should
These
be.
are current cul-de-sac size.
It should be. Minimum 2 spaces per dwelling.
Now, what's the 500-gallon, 20-pound?
That's fire capability. Water system capable of providing 500 gallons a minute with 20 pounds residual. That's standard
Yeah,
for a standard fire plug.
with a 6-inch line, which should be everywhere in the urban meets that requirement.
Yeah, should be. Scrolling down, minimum 15% of gross acreage open space. It's gonna be hard to fill it up with much more than 15% open space not involved.
So that then cuts down on how big your structures can be, because 15% of your property can't be developed. Now, the 30-foot buffer around is part of that.
That's right, it counts as part of that, exactly. Commercial mixed use, 2-acre minimum, where the residential was 5 acres. Commercial has a 40-foot perimeter as opposed to a 30-foot. And 40-foot peripheral boundary and 10-foot side and rear yard and the permanent landscape areas. No yard requirements within. This one has a height requirement. Commercial has a 3-story or 35-foot height max. Same density for residential. 40% of total area covered by structures. So if you've got a 2-acre commercial PUD, you can't cover more than 40% of that 2 acres with structure. Or,
When you
The
say,
rest is for parking.
when you
or
say,
landscaping, or, yeah,
when you're saying structure, that's the building itself, it's not concrete as far or asphalt. as far
depends
as
on the
parking.
definition.
Yeah,
Depends on the definition in the zoning ordinance. What is a structure? Typically, it's what has walls and a floor.
the building.
Yeah.
Right, that's what's in, and right now, like what we have, that falls in line with R1 and R2. Max lot coverage is 40%, that's all they're allowed to.
If it's attached, it could be a patio. It could be something, a parking space beside a building. A factory can have a row of, loading, unloading area that could be considered part of the structure too.
But a dwelling is where people live,
Yes.
just to clarify.
So it's, now, if the carport is attached to the dwelling, it is counted. As the dwelling.
It's kind of as a dwelling, it doesn't count towards the square footage, once it's even there.
Square footage is different, max coverage of the lot.
As far as coverage of the lot for drainage.
Mhm.
Understand.
We're running into that with the development beside EMS. Because of the size of their lot, how much is theirs going to be asphalted? Which again goes back to water runoff and what.
Same street width requirement, 2-way and 1-way streets, 80-foot turnaround, dead end. Health department or TDEC, I suppose. That was the big question is, do you want developments limited to public sanitary sewer? It says it in both. And this one, in commercial, it has an option for an alternative system approved by the health department or TDEC.
That was in the residential, they had the option, correct?
Well, it's in commercial.
Commercials
Mhm.
just, I just saw that with it. Sanitary sewer only.
That's the question. The way it's written, the development shall be served with a public sanitary sewer system or an alternative sewage disposal system. So for commercial, do you want it limited to public?
That's something.
In residential, I assume you want it to have an alternative.
Well, yeah, residential would, septic tank could be suitable for that, but for commercial, everything else we have.
How can you have a septic tank on your sewer building? It's fine.
See, that's something that we're protected because it says if it's TDEC approved. Now, a lot of places like in Lebanon have got this cluster type of septic system where it all kind of goes. And is connected to like one big septic area. And they want to prove that. here.
Depending on how good your soil is, it may require a primary, secondary, and a tertiary.
And they want to prove that here because the current people working at the health department.
No, because the land's not good enough to support that drainage. Has nothing to do
We
with.
just wanted to protect, oh, we get a new person at the health
Yeah.
department, we'll allow, but,
No, it's all about the land.
so we wanna.
So the question is then, is that something we want to look, you know?
Well, I got one. What's the difference in this PUD and this in our regular R3 on the units?
Land certain,
What?
land certain. This is all based on plan.
Right, but what is R3 in this right here? Is it 4 houses per acre and 12 units, right?
I think it is.
So it's the same
It's the
right
same.
there,
Same density.
but on the R3, the minimum for the house size on it is what? Or is there?
Same as this. It doesn't change.
There's not a minimum.
R3, it is what it is.
So you do
As long as you
whatever
can
it
meet your
is.
setback
Looks like he was
on
talking. The R3 zoning, he wanted 26 instead of 24.
Yeah,
It was just,
because,
to go to this would give him just a little bit of variance, but he's gotta present everything first.
Mm-hmm.
because this
And you
takes,
can sell it some.
Not trying to give you the runaround. This is just another zone.
Right,
so the reason the individual went from R1 to R3, he was able to get the 2 more houses because R3 has less setback. Well, in a PUD, there's no setbacks inside the PUD.
right.
Once you get past that 30 or 40 foot buffer, depending on which PUD you're looking at, commercial or residential. There is no setbacks inside, so you can,
Other than code and
yeah, other than fire code, keeping them sort of apart. Or firewalls or whatnot that they could do. So this does stay in line with what we already have on the books.
Right.
It's just making, like he says, plan specific. When you bring it to us, you're gonna do this plan.
Right,
So, because a lot of people, when they bring a rezoning, they'll bring the pretty pictures to the county court. And they'll let all the commissioners look at it, and if you go back to the videos, one of the first things I say is, hey, it's R3. Look at what's the most dense you could possibly put on this. Don't pay attention to the pretty pictures.
Yeah.
Because we've already been bit by that.
but it seems like me also, if somebody buys that land and goes through all the trouble to get this done, and then they sell it, the guy that's like, he sold it to,
Yep.
has to do all that again.
Yes.
No.
No, if as long as
He's
he
following
buys,
the plan.
if he buys the
But
place.
he's not wanting to go by that plan.
Well, no, he's gotta,
Then
then
he's
he's
gotta
gotta
go
go.
all
Yeah,
That way he's
Then
in
it
back
might not
doors.
go then, you was talking about that other guy that bought that R3, so he's got to pretty much,
He's
That
locked
way the
into
other
that
guy won't
plan.
back doors.
right,
He's locked into that PUD unless he comes back and rezones it. Now, he can rezone it and change the PUD, he can rezone it and ask to be in an R1 or an R2 or another zoning. But he can't build something else without bringing it back to the
Right.
county court and asking, can you do it?
And that just, Jeff, that just closes the loophole for
Right.
them when they sell. And which we want.
right,
That way we maintain some semblance of control.
It narrows open zoning.
If you travel to Louisiana, you can see it. They really need, but they needed it now. It's today.
And as we're growing bigger and, more denser and more denser, now's the time to get ahead of this.
but you said the minimum on the house is 750 square feet, or is there now?
Yeah, that
It's
is,
750, and
Pretty well.
it don't matter if you're just building one on a lot, or you're building a subdivision, it's the same.
Yep.
Is that something that might need to be,
It's one dwelling unit per
right?
parcel.
Yeah, I wish we could.
I was
go
saying
back.
the subdivision might need to be different from a,
no, a PUD can have a subdivision.
Yeah.
But there's subdivision regulations that will still have to be met inside the PUD.
right,
It doesn't negate those.
So we just talked about the sewage and stuff, and
Yes.
before we go any further.
That-
I wouldn't. I think, well, I think they should have their own sewage.
Well, that's what I wanted the whole, subcommittee to discuss on this. My personal point of view on doing the sewer, especially for the commercial, is they should be sewer only.
Well, I think even.
Because your commercial dumping and
We've got
whatnot,
6 homes right here on our PUD, and right there's all of our septic. I
No,
can't
no,
trust
no,
you.
no, no, no,
You can't do that.
no.
it won't be approved in Tri-State County.
it will not be.
That's in Lebanon.
That's in.
That's different
And you
soils.
might put grease down.
I
I
know,
know.
but at the end of the day here. This is going to negate people from using the loophole. The other thing is before they can go to bring their site plan forward, they're gonna have to go and get all the utilities to sign off and provide that documentation. That what they are wanting to build is where the public utilities can support it.
But so what are we saying that a
So-
residential can do for sewage wise?
Right now, sewer could be anything that's approved by the state. So any septic
Which
that's
is gonna
approved,
get worse and worse and worse every year, but continue.
but that's the current. Right now, that's the current. You can use.
What is this saying is what I mean.
This says the same thing. It's just, it agrees with the current. He's asking, do we want to leave it that way? Or do we want, as we present this, to change that? I would ask this body to think of on the multi-use for the commercial, having that as
Sewer
sewer
only,
Or
not
this-
septic.
but the residential be just like any other residential, that you can be either or.
But in a high density, I don't think we should allow that.
I think it should be sewage. Everything.
Well, but in the current situation, if your land only perks for a 3-bedroom house,
That's all you're gonna build.
that's
anyway.
all you can build.
You can't build 12 dwellings.
You can only build
If
12
it- if it
dwellings if
won't
you
perk.
have sewer.
So that stops it, because it'll never perk for that.
I'm just okay. No.
No, so there's nothing to be worried
Well,
about.
I
Mine
think
perked
it's-
today, or it perked 20 years ago.
Did you hear that? And why are we gonna do something that say, okay, let's put this in the rules? Well,
Technology has advanced.
today, it didn't use perk.
Well, the technology is different, the septic systems are kind of different now. I mean, we do have some properties.
Criteria is a little different.
That, like Bill Ray, they have a specialized, they had enough soils area, they have a specialized septic system that. It rotates, it goes from one field to the next field to the next field, and it just continues to do that. And so that allows for.
That was expensive.
It's very expensive, and it allows for them to be able to have those big music camps and things of that nature, band camps out there.
You look like you make sense.
No, I don't say it. When I grew up, we had the outside toilet, didn't worry about those.
That's an alternative system.
And then
You're trying to get out.
Not necessarily state approved, but, my thought, and it's like I said, I wanted to present to all of us. Is just keeping it the way it is now. So, you already have the requirements, regulations on perking and how much you can put on there. That limits a lot already, and we don't have to put anything in, on our side. State already limits that sort of thing. But as far as the commercial use, doing the mixed use. To be able to do that limits that and kind of keeps it clean.
That, I don't have, we don't have to be 100%, I won't sue it all. And I won't, so, I'm just saying that.
No, I'm asking,
On that sewer only, but on the other place, if it don't, it will never perk, you have to say, it'll either perk for a 3-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house, but never a 12. I'm just saying,
But there's gonna be these tiny, not tiny, they're gonna be smaller ponds. That
But
may
they
only be-
won't-
they'll have to have sewer access in order for them to.
they'll either have to have sewer access or it won't work. You'll never be able to perk that many bedrooms on a 1-acre lot,
Well,
and have that much fill line on a 1-acre lot.
It says that from a residential PUD, it's a 5-acre limit. So they have to have at least 5 acres or they can't have a PUD. For residential.
And their sewage can be, their septic tank can be in that 15 or whatever foot.
It could be in the buffer zone, that could be the perked area.
Which does restrict plant trees and stuff, but still.
So I'm asking, Is there a motion in favor of that?
I have a motion to get off sales. Oh, they're not getting going.
I have a motion to approve with the amendment of sewer on the mixed use.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yeah.
All right, got a second, all in favor?
All right,
Any opposed?
I am fine. No, I'm fine with that. I just want more. I want it to be nice.
It will be.
Well, you walk a fine line on what,
Or
You-
nice and not allowing something to be done at all.
well, there's that,
fine line between nice and illegal.
exactly. There's only so much you can limit.
Yeah.
You can regulate, but there's only so much you can limit. And that's a difference, and those
But they're
words are
trying to be
important.
told they can't plant trees if they're out there to sewage.
When they get their permit, they are very much aware.
Oh, yeah.
And if they do, they know they'll be swimming in their own feces.
But this is still just,
But if
if they don't make the other stuff, right?
Say that again?
This is still,
I'm trying to
this
figure
zoning is if they can't meet, they wanna do something. That
That's
doesn't match
nice.
up with their zoning already.
No, they might still wanna do this just for an easier approval. I mean, if you come in asking for an open, R3, well, whether you want to do, 12, units per acre, we have to look at it. Can that area support that? Because that's the max, that's what
I
can
like
be
that
allowed.
type of support.
And the thing is that 90%
I
of
can
the
probably
time,
always find something they won't match up.
Yeah.
If they want.
between road frontage, between whether or not the infrastructure of the utilities can handle it. Yeah, 90% of the time it will not support it. I'm just being straight up honest with you. If we were in a more densely populated area with with a much, larger, broader, public utility structure in place, that'd be a different story. But where we are right now,
And the amount of free acreage we have.
correct.
At least this right, like.
Yeah.
About right.
And they might,
And it's future planning.
And anything in here can be changed.
100%. With the amendment of mixed use being on sewer loans,
You know, change that.
we needed, it's there.
already done. So that is what we're looking at. Right now, the choice needs to be made. Do we present the HUD part separately and go ahead and present that?
I would present it separately so that it doesn't have the opportunity to derail anything else that we've got on the plan.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna talk with Mr. Kerr and see because I'd like to have planning's input on this
100%,
and their support if we can get it.
because if it comes with a favorable from them and from us, it changes the whole.
And Rosalie has already brought up at the last meeting of planning, she kind of presented the original rough from Cheatham County. For them to be looking at. So we'll do further discussion on that. We'll have to get. That would have to be a separate ordinance, that thing.
To do it before you do this,
Yeah. So we'll have to get Cheatham counties and just clean it up. So, yeah. So, okay, so. All right, so I just need a copy of that to submit as an ordinance.
If you will have,
She-
fantastic.
All right, so is there something else that you're wanting
the
to?
only other thing left in the commercial is the ability to waive some of the peripheral boundary or landscaping requirements or modify some of the improvements required. That's written in there too, so you will have the ability to waive some of the things that you say are required.
And what is required right now as far as landscaping goes?
It's whatever's in the general ordinance.
Than what we already have in place. There's buffer strips for between commercial and residential. But inside a PUD, they would be able, we could play with that because it's gonna be the overall project. Right now, those buffers are when two zones, meet up on a property line. That's where the buffer would go. If you're doing mixed use, you've got commercial in the middle of residential. Sometimes the commercial is underneath residential. Depending on how the project was laid out. So it gives some flexibility to the planning commission to be able to work around with what's there. Instead of locked in.
This is a different subject. Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And
So-
the mixed use says that they raise the buffering requirements.
Yeah.
Because the North Variant, it's static.
Rip Club.
You want to do first one?
Am I gonna go one? I don't think so.
No, you're gonna do the script.
I don't think so. You want people to spend money, not
Right.
run and sue.
We don't need to spend time on this. I just thought
Median, but
that I would go over the things that we had talked about before in the matrix. This.
All right, so
At the bottom of your handout. On the first handout, there's a discussion of things that will remain.
You talking about the matrix?
no,
Yeah.
this one here, the little
Okay.
at the bottom of the code thing.
Let's just say, for instance,
I think I have.
Yeah.
I have this one.
That's
it's at the
it.
bottom,
Oh,
it's at
yeah.
The bottom paragraph.
for instance, in A1. The matrix will identify, in this case, it's TA1, will identify those uses allowable in the district. Where today, if you look at what's in the ordinance, it tells you all these different uses. That will go away. Those different uses in the ag district that are spelled out here will be in the matrix. So that part gets cleaned up. The only thing really that will remain when you see the final document is the description, the district description. Permitted uses go in the matrix. Accessory uses and structures will remain because they're specific to each district. Uses permitted as special exceptions go in the matrix, so that will come out. And it's beyond that. Uses prohibited is just a simple statement that if it's not allowed or allowed on appeal, it's prohibited. Dimensional requirements go in the table with bulk, yard setback, widths, those kind of things. Lot coverage, that's in the table. Height requirement, that's in the table. Parking space will remain. Accessory structures will remain. So out of all those pages, talking about uses and dimensions, widths, heights, setbacks, all that goes here and in the bulk table. For
This is what you-
residential, commercial, and industrial.
This is what you were talking to us about, pulling stuff out of the codes and zoning and putting it into an appendix. Where it's easier to be changed.
So anybody wants to know what the width requirement is or what use is allowed, you got one place to look. Residential will be on one page, uses will be on 2 pages, if I can keep it on 2 pages.
Well, I was looking, you have nothing listed for mining and quarrying. And that should be, correct me if I'm wrong, Rosalie, but that should be in M2, TM2.
Don't have anything listed for bed and breakfast either. That was a question that I had.
I don't know if we have anything addressing them, do we?
Yeah.
It will show here as an intermediate impact use. Which becomes. If I can get back to it without burning up too many electrons.
What's A and what's S?
Permitted and special exception.
So it's 11 in one.
I don't have that. I don't have that on here, Jeff. It goes in the final copy, but it's not on there. But it says if it's blank, it's not allowed. If it's S, it's special exception, it goes to the appeals board, and if it's P, it's a permitted use.
Bed and breakfast should have P in the TA.
Well, it will be in the intermediate, in this layout, it will be a part of the intermediate impact category. That's what I'm hunting for, not very successfully.
Intermediate impact, you've got it as a S. Intermediate, right here.
Yes, ma'am.
No, he's actually looking through our ordinance upon the way it is right now.
Item number 5 on the current ordinance. And we then for.
That don't help me at all.
What else can I say? Page 67 out of 127.
And that don't help me at all. I'm 160 pages. I'm trying. I'm scrolling with
No worries.
fast as my little fingers will let me.
This takes away out a separate formula.
And I was going to point out those uses that were also allowed as intermediate impact uses and whether you thought that made sense to leave it that way.
Wait, what?
Maybe that's a discussion for another time, because I can't find it. I'm up to definitions, and I think we were past it doing 60 miles an hour. Y'all, I apologize.
Any excuse, that's right.
Well, you're in Article 4, instead of Article 5. Bottom of the page. It says,
Maybe there is an Article 5 here somewhere. That's the. I'm looking for the use classification. Maybe I haven't dropped it in yet.
and you're on 5 now, what is that, 18? It's back on, Article 5-4.
I might not have dropped it in here yet. That might be my mistake. That's still the zoning districts. No, so that's too far. Pardon my bookkeeping.
That's all right, but that's why we have these meetings to try to keep everything.
Put that about a year and a half ago.
I don't think it's in here, Dave. But anyway, there is a listing of uses in the intermediate impact
Don't know how I did it out.
classification. And my
So
question
you're
is
not on the yard somewhere?
whether it belongs there or not.
So it's been glare balls a year and a half ago, and they gave it.
Did it? Oh, boy.
I guess 160 pages is not enough. It needs a few more, but I was going. It should be after definition, but it's not. So I guess I didn't forget.
Yeah, then you should have the newest, zoning, ordinance we passed is the mining board, which allowed it in M2. Should say allowed it.
M2,
M,
Yes,
was M said.
heavy industrial.
it is permitted or special.
It's permitted.
I think it's still special exception.
It is,
It has to get a 30. That is what we.
Yay.
The caveat was that it's all had to come.
There you go.
Very good.
and then the adult entertainment is
You know,
an M1.
And what's that?
M1.
Yeah,
You need a special exception on that.
No, no.
can't do that.
Yeah.
Adult entertainment is constitutionally protected.
Well, we do have all this playgrounds here, so I guess it's not fair.
Well, before we passed that, you could have put it anywhere. You could have put a script club right next to a church or an elementary school,
And where is it, Lynn?
and now it can only go in M1.
Yeah, but where's that? Lynn?
You have to look at the zoning map and see the M1, and
Oh,
that's the only places they can go.
And what is on the top of the phone?
We take them out.
I built one, that's where I wanted. We're out there.
So this purple,
Where-
the light
see.
purple. Is the one. Yeah, some years off from Arizona.
Down Tyler's Lane.
Out that way.
Something like that.
Down there.
He's got a plan
He's got a plan.
for Tyler's Lane.
Oh, yeah.
No, I like his newest plan much better.
Oh, he got a better
I
plan.
looked it up, it's Brandon, Mississippi.
Wow.
That's the name of the town.
Sure is.
I looked it up.
Well, we need a plan down there.
We was gonna get one down there.
I'm telling you,
Have a
man.
dock and all that stuff in the track, walking, got shot in,
I heard,
they,
Well, the state did the study and it was ready to go and it got shut down. I think it died here.
somebody died.
It died on the line here, it didn't die, the state did the study and the money was
Somebody-
spent.
Yeah, they died and then. they-
Do you have anything else for us? Rosalie, do you have anything for us?
No, other than talking about what we were gonna start doing when people are bringing in development plans to the planning office, getting their gut feelings, that they have to go and get signed off by everything.
Yeah.
And then also, looking at even requiring like an impact study on stormwater as well, when they bring it to the planning, you know.
is this for a home or multi?
Large subdivisions and whatnot.
Water rooftops with water runoff issues.
Built on land that only has 2 inches of dirt on it, and rock underneath. The only place that's
That's all
water.
drugs again.
Well,
Since I was put it there.
Yeah.
Or-
Oh, it's a rock.
your neighbor comes in and builds a house beside you and dumps all their water down around your foundation, and you gotta spend 20 grand to have pillars put in. You shouldn't have to spend that 20 grand.
No,
That water shouldn't be diverted onto your property. So,
I would love to have a foot of dirt.
wouldn't it be nice?
That's the only issue, whenever you.
Good old Rocky
cleans
Top.
up mouth, it makes the water.
yeah,
The more trees you cut down, the more water you got running.
Did somebody have a motion to adjourn?
That's what I was waiting for.
Motion to adjourn.
second.
All right.
Second by Minnie.